3 years after the divorce, Mark walked into the courtroom, wearing a wrinkled dress shirt. A single father, no lawyer, no money to hire one. The room filled with quiet laughter when he stood up and said, "I'll be representing myself." Everyone thought his ex-wife would win easily. But when the judge asked Mark one simple question about money, he answered with just one sentence. And the entire courtroom went dead silent. You won't believe what happened next. Keep watching, because this ends with tears, real tears, from everyone in that room. Mark had lived in the same rented apartment on the edge of town for 3 years. The place was small, 1 bedroom for his daughter, a narrow kitchen, a couch that doubled as his bed. The furniture was old, but clean. The walls were covered with crayon drawings his little girl had made. Every Sunday morning, they sat at the kitchen table and made pancakes together. She always asked for chocolate chips. He always said yes. He worked as a repair technician for a mid-sized heating and cooling company. The pay was steady, not enough to save much, but enough to cover rent, groceries, and the occasional trip to the park. His daughter's name was Lily. She was 8 years old. She liked drawing, especially animals. She had a collection of colored pencils she kept in a tin box under her bed. Mark's ex-wife was named Emily. They had been married for 6 years before the divorce. She worked as a human resources manager at a regional firm. Her income was higher than his. She lived in a house she had bought with help from her family. After the divorce, they had agreed on joint custody. Lily spent weekdays with Mark, and weekends with Emily. For 3 years it had worked. There were no arguments, no complications, just 2 people trying to raise their daughter without making things worse. But 3 months ago, something changed. Emily started calling more often. She asked questions about Lily's schooling, her diet, her schedule. At first, Mark thought she was just being careful. Then the questions became suggestions. Then the suggestions became concerns. Emily told him that Lily should be in a better school, that she needed extracurricular activities, that the apartment was too small. Mark listened. He didn't argue. He knew Emily wasn't wrong about some of it. But he also knew Lily was happy. She never complained. She liked her school. She liked coming home to him every evening. Then one Tuesday afternoon, Mark came home from work and found an envelope taped to his front door. It was a court summons. Emily had filed to modify custody. She wanted full custody of Lily. The document listed several reasons: insufficient income, unstable work schedule, inadequate living conditions, lack of family support. Mark read it 3 times. Each time the words felt heavier. He called Emily that night. She answered after 2 rings. Her voice was calm, professional. "Why didn't you tell me?" Mark asked. Emily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I didn't think you'd understand." "Understand what?" "That this is what's best for Lily." Mark tightened his grip on the phone. "You could have talked to me first." "I tried," Emily said. "You didn't listen." "I listened," Mark said. "I just didn't agree." Emily sighed. "Mark, I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing this because Lily deserves better." "Better than what?" "Better than what we're giving her now." The call ended there. Mark sat on the couch, staring at the summons. He thought about calling a lawyer. He looked up a few numbers online. The first consultation was free, but the retainer fee started at $3,000. Some firms wanted $5,000. Mark didn't have that kind of money. He had maybe $800 in savings. He thought about asking friends for help, but most of them were in the same boat, working paycheck to paycheck, barely getting by. The court date was set for 3 weeks out. Mark tried to prepare. He printed articles about custody cases. He wrote down notes about his work schedule, his relationship with Lily, his ability to provide for her. But every time he sat down to organize his thoughts, he felt overwhelmed. He wasn't a lawyer. He didn't know how to argue in front of a judge. He didn't even know what questions they would ask. One of his coworkers, a man named Danny, told him he should just settle. "You're not going to win this, man," Danny said. "She's got money. She's got a lawyer. You got nothing. Mark didn't respond. He just kept working. The night before the hearing, Mark couldn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table with a mug of cold coffee and a folder full of handwritten notes. Lily was asleep in the other room. He thought about waking her up just to see her face, but he didn't. He just sat there, staring at the walls covered in her drawings. The courthouse was downtown. Mark arrived 20 minutes early. He wore the only dress shirt he owned. It was wrinkled, but he had ironed it as best he could. He carried a folder with his notes, and a small notebook in case he needed to write something down. The hallway outside the courtroom was crowded. People in suits walked past him without looking. He found a bench and sat down. Emily arrived 10 minutes later. She was dressed in a dark blazer and slacks. Her lawyer walked beside her, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a leather briefcase. They didn't look at Mark. They walked straight into the courtroom. Mark waited until his name was called. When he entered, the room felt bigger than he expected. The ceilings were high. The walls were painted a dull gray. The judge sat at the front, an older man with reading glasses perched on his nose. Emily and her lawyer sat on the left side. Mark took his seat on the right alone. The judge opened the case file and glanced at the documents. Then he looked at Mark. "Mr. Dawson, I see you're representing yourself today." Mark stood. "Yes, Your Honor." A few people in the gallery exchanged glances. Someone in the back row chuckled softly. Mark ignored it. The judge nodded. "You understand this is a custody modification hearing?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And you understand that Miss Carter is petitioning for full custody of your daughter?" "Yes, Your Honor." The judge set the file down. "All right. Miss Carter's counsel, you may begin." Emily's lawyer stood. She was polished, confident. She laid out the case methodically. She presented a chart showing Mark's income compared to Emily's. She showed photographs of Mark's apartment. She pointed out that Mark had no extended family in the area, no backup if something went wrong. She presented a calendar showing that Mark's work schedule sometimes changed on short notice. She made it sound like Mark was barely holding things together. Mark sat and listened. He didn't interrupt. He took notes, but his hands were shaking. He could feel the weight of the room pressing down on him. Everyone seemed convinced. Emily's lawyer was too good, too prepared. Mark felt like he was already losing. When it was his turn to speak, Mark stood. He didn't have slides or charts. He didn't have photographs or expert testimony. He had his folder and his notebook. He looked at the judge. "Your Honor, I'm not going to pretend I'm rich," Mark said. "I'm not going to pretend I have everything figured out. But I want to say something." The judge gestured for him to continue. Mark took a breath. "I work as a repair technician. I fix air conditioners and heaters. I make enough to pay rent and buy groceries and keep the lights on. That's it. I don't have savings. I don't have a house. I don't have a college degree." He looked at Emily. She was staring at the table in front of her. "But for the last 3 years," Mark continued, "my daughter has never missed a meal with me. She's never gone to bed hungry. She's never come home to an empty apartment. Every night I'm there. Every morning I make her breakfast. Every school project, every parent-teacher meeting, every scraped knee, I'm there. Not because I have money. Not because I have help. But because that's what a father does." The room was quiet. The judge was watching him carefully now. Emily's lawyer shifted in her seat, but didn't say anything. Mark sat back down. His heart was pounding. He didn't know if it had been enough, but it was the truth, and it was all he had. The judge wrote something in his notes. Then he looked at Emily's lawyer. "Counselor, do you have any witnesses to present?" Emily's lawyer stood. "We do, Your Honor. We'd like to call Miss Carter to the stand." Emily stood and walked to the witness box. She answered questions about her job, her income, her living situation. She talked about how much she loved Lily, how she wanted to provide her with more opportunities, better schools, extracurricular programs, a stable home environment. She said she wasn't trying to take Lily away from Mark. She just wanted what was best for their daughter. When Emily finished, the judge asked Mark if he had any questions for her. Mark looked at his notes. Then he looked at Emily. He thought about all the things he could ask, all the ways he could challenge her, but he didn't. He just shook his head. "No, Your Honor." The judge nodded. "All right. We'll adjourn for today and reconvene in 2 weeks. I'll review the materials submitted by both parties and hear additional testimony if necessary." The gavel came down. The hearing was over. Mark stood and walked out of the courtroom. He didn't look at Emily. He didn't look at anyone. He just walked outside. The sky was overcast. Mark sat on a bench near the parking lot and stared at the ground. He thought about what the judge had said. 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks of waiting. 2 more weeks of wondering if he was about to lose his daughter. His phone buzzed. It was a text from Lily. She was staying with Emily's mother during the hearing. The message said, "Dad, when are you coming to pick me up?" Mark typed back, "Soon, sweetheart. I'll be there soon." He put the phone in his pocket and stood up. He didn't know what was going to happen. But he knew one thing. He wasn't giving up. Not yet. The 2 weeks passed slowly. Mark went to work every morning and came home every evening. He picked Lily up from school, made dinner, helped her with homework. They watched cartoons together on the couch. She talked about her day. He listened. He didn't tell her about the hearing. He didn't want her to worry. But at night, after she went to bed, Mark sat at the kitchen table and tried to prepare. He read through custody laws online. He printed out articles about parental rights. He wrote down every detail he could think of, every meal he had cooked, every school event he had attended, every time he had rearranged his work schedule to be there for her. He filled an entire notebook with notes. But when he read them back, they felt weak, like they wouldn't be enough. The second hearing arrived on a Thursday morning. Mark wore the same shirt. He carried the same folder. This time, he didn't arrive early. He walked into the courtroom just as the clerk was calling the case. Emily and her lawyer were already seated. The judge looked up as Mark took his place. "Mr. Dawson?" "Good morning." Mark nodded. "Good morning, Your Honor." The judge opened the file in front of him. "We're here to continue the custody modification hearing. Miss Carter's counsel, I believe you have additional testimony to present." Emily's lawyer stood. "Yes, Your Honor. We'd like to call our first witness, Miss Rachel Bennett." A woman in her 40s walked to the witness stand. She was wearing a gray suit. She worked with Emily at the same firm. She had known Emily for 6 years. The lawyer asked her about Emily's character. Miss Bennett said Emily was hardworking, responsible, and deeply devoted to her daughter. She said Emily often talked about wanting to give Lily more opportunities, better schools, a more stable environment. She said Emily was always thinking about what was best for her child. Mark listened. He didn't object. He didn't know how to object. He just took notes. The second witness was a child psychologist, a man named Dr. Philip Morgan. He had a trim beard and glasses. He had never met Lily, but he had been hired to review the case materials and provide an expert opinion. The lawyer asked him about the importance of stability in a child's development. Dr. Morgan said children needed consistency. They needed access to educational resources. They needed an environment that supported their emotional and intellectual growth. He said financial instability could create stress that affected a child's well-being. Mark wrote that down too. Financial instability. He underlined it twice. When it was Mark's turn to cross-examine, he stood. He looked at Dr. Morgan. "Have you ever met my daughter?" Dr. Morgan adjusted his glasses. "No, I have not." "Have you ever been to my home?" "No." "Have you ever spoken to her teachers or her friends?" "No, Mr. Dawson. My assessment is based on the materials provided." Mark sat back down. He didn't know what else to say. The third piece of evidence was a report on Mark's living situation. Emily's lawyer presented photographs of his apartment. The pictures showed the small kitchen, the narrow hallway, the second-hand furniture. She pointed out that the apartment had only one bedroom, that Mark slept on the couch, that the building was old and located in a neighborhood with higher crime rates than where Emily lived. She said the environment was not conducive to a child's growth. Mark looked at the photographs. They made his home look worse than it was. The lighting was harsh. The angles were unflattering. But he couldn't deny the facts. The apartment was small. The furniture was old. He did sleep on the couch. Emily's lawyer also presented a work schedule report. It showed that Mark's hours sometimes changed on short notice, that he occasionally had to work late or take emergency calls. She said this lack of consistency made it difficult for him to provide reliable care. She mentioned that Mark had been late to a parent-teacher conference once, that he had asked a neighbor to watch Lily for a few hours on 2 separate occasions. Mark felt the room closing in on him. Every detail they presented was true. He couldn't argue with the facts. He could only hope the judge saw beyond them. When Emily's lawyer finished, the judge turned to Mark. "Mr. Dawson, do you have any witnesses or evidence to present?" Mark stood. His hands were shaking. He opened his folder and pulled out a small notebook. It was worn at the edges. The cover was faded. He walked to the front of the courtroom and handed it to the judge. "Your Honor, this is my work schedule for the last 3 years." The judge took the notebook and opened it. The pages were filled with handwritten notes, dates, times, shift changes. Every entry was detailed. Every week was accounted for. Mark stayed standing. "I don't have a lawyer. I don't have expert witnesses. But I have this. For 3 years, I've kept track of every shift I've worked. Every time I asked to change my schedule, every time I took time off, and every single time, it was because of my daughter." The judge flipped through the pages slowly. Mark continued. "I've never missed a school event unless I was working. And when I was working, I always made sure someone I trusted could be there. I've never taken a vacation without her. I've never prioritized anything over her. Not once." The courtroom was silent. Emily's lawyer looked at the notebook from across the room, but said nothing. Emily was staring at the table in front of her. The judge read a few more pages. Then he looked up at Mark. "You tracked every shift change for 3 years?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And these entries, these are all related to your daughter's schedule?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Every one of them." The judge closed the notebook and set it on the bench. He wrote something in his notes. Then he looked at Emily's lawyer. "Counselor, do you have any response to this?" Emily's lawyer stood. She didn't look rattled, but she didn't look as confident as before. "Your Honor, while Mr. Dawson's dedication is commendable, it doesn't address the core issue. A child needs more than just time. She needs resources. She needs educational opportunities. She needs a stable environment that can support her long-term development." The judge nodded slowly. "Noted." He looked at Mark. "Mr. Dawson, you may sit down." Mark returned to his seat. He felt lighter than before. Not because he thought he had won, but because he had finally said what he needed to say. The hearing continued. Emily's lawyer presented more arguments. She talked about the quality of schools in Emily's neighborhood, the extracurricular programs available, the support network Emily had through her family. She painted a picture of a life that Mark couldn't provide. A life with more opportunities, more stability, more of everything. Mark didn't argue. He didn't have a counter-argument. He just sat and listened. When the hearing ended, the judge said he would review all the materials and issue a decision within 10 days. He thanked both parties and dismissed the court. Mark gathered his folder and walked out. He didn't look at Emily. He didn't look at her lawyer. He just left. Outside, the air was cold. Mark sat on the same bench he had sat on 2 weeks earlier. He pulled out his phone and stared at the screen. No new messages. He thought about calling Lily, but he didn't know what to say. He thought about calling a friend, but he didn't want to explain what had just happened. He sat there for a long time. Then he drove home. That night Mark couldn't sleep. He lay on the couch and stared at the ceiling. He thought about the notebook. He thought about the photographs of his apartment. He thought about everything Emily's lawyer had said, and he wondered if maybe they were right. Maybe Lily did deserve better. Maybe he was holding her back. Maybe he was being selfish by trying to keep her. The next morning, Mark dropped Lily off at school and went to work. He fixed 3 air conditioning units and replaced a furnace. His coworker Danny asked him how the hearing went. Mark told him it was fine. Danny didn't push. But that night, after Lily went to bed, Mark sat at the kitchen table and thought about giving up. He thought about calling Emily and telling her she could have full custody, that he wouldn't fight anymore, that he would just take whatever visitation rights they gave him. It would be easier. It would be less painful. And maybe it would be better for Lily. He picked up his phone. He scrolled to Emily's number. His thumb hovered over the call button, but he didn't press it. Instead, he set the phone down and put his head in his hands. He sat there for over an hour. The apartment was quiet. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Mark thought about the last 3 years. He thought about every morning he had woken up early to make breakfast. Every night he had stayed up late to help with homework. Every weekend they had spent together. Every laugh. Every scraped knee. Every bedtime story. He thought about the way Lily looked at him when he picked her up from school. The way she ran to him. The way she hugged him. The way she said, "Dad, what are we having for dinner?" And then his phone buzzed. It was a text from Lily. She was staying at Emily's house for the night. The message said, "Dad, what are you making tomorrow night? Can we have spaghetti?" Mark stared at the message. He read it 3 times. Then he typed back, "Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you want." He set the phone down. He wiped his eyes and he made a decision. He wasn't going to give up. Not because he thought he could win, but because Lily deserved a father who fought for her, even if he lost. Even if everyone thought he was foolish. He was going to fight. The next week passed in a blur. Mark went to work. He came home. He cooked dinner. He helped Lily with her homework. They watched TV together. They talked about her day. Everything felt normal, but underneath Mark was carrying the weight of what was coming. The final hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. The judge would make his decision then. Mark didn't prepare this time. He didn't write notes. He didn't research laws. He had already said everything he could say. He had already shown everything he had. There was nothing left to do but wait. On Sunday night, Lily asked him if everything was okay. They were sitting on the couch. She was drawing in her sketchbook. Mark was staring at the TV without really watching it. "Dad, are you okay?" Lily asked. Mark looked at her. "Yeah, sweetheart. I'm fine. You seem sad." Mark smiled. It felt forced, but he tried. "I'm not sad, just tired." Lily set down her pencil. "Did you have a hard day at work?" "Something like that." She leaned against him. "It's okay, Dad. You always feel better after spaghetti." Mark wrapped his arm around her. "You're right. Spaghetti fixes everything." They sat there for a while. Lily went back to drawing. Mark watched her. He memorized the way her hand moved across the paper, the way she bit her lip when she concentrated, the way she hummed softly to herself. He wanted to remember this moment, just in case. The final hearing was on Monday morning. Mark wore the same shirt. He carried the same folder, but this time he felt different. Calmer. Resigned. He had done everything he could. Now it was out of his hands. The courtroom was the same. The judge was the same. Emily and her lawyer were the same. But something felt heavier. Final. The judge opened the case file. "We're here to conclude the custody modification hearing. I've reviewed all the materials submitted by both parties. I've considered the testimony and evidence presented. Before I issue my decision, I want to give both parties an opportunity to make a final statement. Miss Carter's counsel, would you like to speak?" Emily's lawyer stood. She gave a brief summary of their case. She emphasized Emily's financial stability, her living situation, and her ability to provide for Lily's future. She said this wasn't about taking Lily away from her father. It was about giving her the best possible life. She sat down. The judge turned to Mark. "Mr. Dawson, do you have anything you'd like to say?" Mark stood. He didn't have notes this time. He didn't have a plan. He just had the truth. "Your Honor, I know I'm not perfect. I know I don't have money. I know I can't give my daughter everything she deserves. But I've never missed a meal with her. I've never forgotten to help her with a school project. I've never been too tired to read her a bedtime story. And if tomorrow I lose everything, the one thing I don't want to lose is the time I have with her." His voice cracked slightly. He steadied himself and continued. "I'm not asking you to choose me over her mother. I'm just asking you to let me keep being her father every day, not just on weekends. Because that's all I have. That's all I am. And I don't know how to be anything else." Mark sat down. The courtroom was silent. The judge was writing something. Emily was looking down at her hands. Her lawyer was flipping through papers but not really reading them. And then the door at the back of the courtroom opened. Everyone turned. A small figure stood in the doorway. Lily. She was holding the hand of an older woman, Emily's mother. The grandmother looked apologetic, but didn't stop the child from moving forward. Lily ran down the aisle. Her footsteps echoed in the quiet courtroom. She didn't look at the judge. She didn't look at anyone except Mark. She reached him and wrapped her arms around his waist. She was crying. "Dad," she said. Her voice was shaking. "I want to stay with you." Mark dropped to his knees. He held her tight. He didn't know what to say. He could feel the entire courtroom watching them, but he didn't care. He just held his daughter. The judge looked at Emily's mother, who was still standing near the door. "Ma'am, I assume you're the child's grandmother." The older woman nodded. She walked forward slowly. "Yes, Your Honor. I'm sorry. She's been crying all morning. She said she needed to see her father. I didn't know what else to do." The judge glanced at Emily. She was staring at Lily and Mark. Her eyes were red. She looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. The judge set his pen down. He looked at Lily. "Young lady, do you understand where you are right now?" Lily wiped her eyes and nodded. "Yes, sir. This is a courtroom. Do you know what that means?" "It's where people decide things," Lily said quietly. "That's right. And do you know what we're deciding today?" Lily looked at Mark. Then she looked at the judge. "You're deciding if I have to leave my dad." The judge leaned back in his chair. He didn't look angry. He looked tired. "Sweetheart, nobody said you have to leave your dad. We're just trying to figure out what's best for you." "I know what's best for me," Lily said. Her voice was steadier now. "I want to live with my dad." Emily stood up. Her lawyer tried to stop her, but Emily ignored her. She walked over to Lily and Mark. She knelt down beside them. Lily turned and looked at her mother. Emily's face was wet with tears. "Lily," Emily said softly, "I'm not trying to take you away from your dad." "Then why are we here?" Lily asked. Emily didn't have an answer. She just looked at Mark. He was still holding their daughter. His eyes were red too. Emily took a breath and stood up. She turned to the judge. "Your Honor," Emily said, "I'd like to withdraw my petition." Her lawyer stood immediately. "Miss Carter, we need to discuss this." Emily shook her head. "No. I'm done." The lawyer tried again. "Emily, please. Let's take a moment." Emily looked at her lawyer. "I said I'm done." The courtroom was silent. The judge watched Emily carefully. "Miss Carter, are you certain about this?" "Yes, Your Honor." "You understand that withdrawing your petition means the current custody arrangement will remain in place?" "I understand." The judge nodded slowly. He wrote something in his notes. Then he looked at Mark. Mr. Dawson, do you have anything to add? Mark stood up. Lily stayed close to him, holding his hand. He looked at Emily. Then he looked at the judge. Your Honor, I don't want to take Emily out of Lily's life. I never did. I just want to keep being her father, every day, the way I have been. The judge closed the case file. All right. Given Miss Carter's withdrawal of the petition, the current custody arrangement will remain in effect. Joint custody. Both parents will continue to share responsibilities for the child's well-being. If there are any issues or conflicts in the future, you're encouraged to resolve them through mediation rather than litigation. He looked at both of them. I'll be honest with you. This court sees a lot of parents who can't stand to be in the same room. But what I've seen here today tells me that both of you love your daughter, and that's the most important thing. Don't lose sight of that. The gavel came down. The case was over. Mark stood in the hallway outside the courtroom. Lily was sitting on a bench nearby, swinging her legs. Emily's mother had taken her to get a drink of water. Emily stood a few feet away from Mark. Her lawyer had already left. It was just the two of them. I'm sorry, Emily said. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the floor. Mark didn't respond right away. He just waited. I thought I was doing the right thing, Emily continued. Everyone kept telling me that Lily needed more, better schools, more opportunities. I started believing them. I started thinking you weren't enough. Mark crossed his arms. And now? Emily finally looked at him. Now I realize I was wrong. Not about wanting more for her, but about thinking you couldn't give it to her. I can't give her a big house, Mark said. I can't give her private school. I can't give her a lot of things. I know, Emily said. But you give her something I forgot about. You're there every single day. You don't miss things. You don't make excuses. You just show up. Mark didn't know what to say. He had spent weeks being angry at Emily. But standing there looking at her, he realized she wasn't the enemy. She was just a mother who wanted the best for her daughter, just like he did. I didn't mean to make this a fight, Emily said. I just thought. She stopped. She wiped her eyes. I don't know what I thought. Mark took a breath. We should talk. Not through lawyers. Just us. About schedules, about what works, about what Lily needs. Emily nodded. I'd like that. They stood there for a moment. Then Emily walked over to the bench where Lily was sitting. She knelt down in front of her daughter and brushed a strand of hair out of her face. I love you, sweetheart. You know that, right? Lily nodded. I know, Mom. I'm sorry I scared you. Lily hugged her. Emily held her for a long time. Then she stood up and looked at Mark. I'll call you this week. We'll figure out a better schedule. Okay, Mark said. Emily left. Mark watched her walk down the hallway and disappear around the corner. Then he turned to Lily. You ready to go home? Lily jumped off the bench. Can we get ice cream? Mark smiled. Yeah, we can get ice cream. They walked out of the courthouse together. The sun was bright. The air was cool. Lily held his hand as they crossed the parking lot. She was talking about her favorite ice cream flavor, mint chocolate chip. She always picked mint chocolate chip. Mark listened. He wasn't thinking about the hearing anymore. He wasn't thinking about the lawyer or the photographs or the arguments. He was just thinking about the small hand holding his, the voice chattering beside him, the way she looked up at him every few seconds to make sure he was listening. They got in the car. Lily buckled her seat belt. Mark started the engine. As they pulled out of the parking lot, Lily asked, Dad, are we still having spaghetti tonight? Mark glanced at her in the rearview mirror. You want spaghetti and ice cream in the same day? Why not? Mark laughed. Why not? They drove to the ice cream shop near their apartment. It was a small place with a striped awning and a chalkboard menu outside. They ordered 2 cones. Mark got vanilla. Lily got mint chocolate chip. They sat on a bench outside and ate in silence for a while. Dad, Lily said eventually, Are you and Mom going to be okay? Mark looked at her. Yeah, sweetheart. We're going to be okay. You're not mad at her? Mark thought about it. No, I'm not mad. Good, Lily said. She took another bite of her ice cream. I don't like it when people are mad. Me neither. They finished their ice cream and drove home. When they got to the apartment, Lily went straight to her room to draw. Mark sat on the couch and looked at the crayon drawings taped to the refrigerator. Pictures of animals, pictures of trees, pictures of the three of them, him, Lily, and Emily, standing together under a big sun. He thought about the last few weeks, the hearings, the arguments, the fear, and he realized something. He hadn't won because he was smarter or because he had better evidence. He had won because he had told the truth. And because Lily knew it was the truth. That night, Mark made spaghetti. Lily set the table. They ate together just like they always did. She told him about a drawing she was working on, a picture of a dragon. He told her about a furnace he had fixed that day. It was normal. It was simple. It was enough. After dinner, they watched TV for a while. Then Lily went to brush her teeth. Mark cleaned up the kitchen. When he was done, he went to her room. She was already in bed holding a stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 3. Good night, sweetheart, Mark said. Good night, Dad. He turned off the light and started to leave, but Lily called out to him. Dad? Yeah? I'm glad I get to stay with you. Mark stood in the doorway. He felt something tighten in his chest. Me too, Lily. Me too. He closed the door softly and walked back to the living room. He sat on the couch and looked around the small apartment. The old furniture, the narrow kitchen, the drawings on the walls. It wasn't much, but it was home. Mark leaned back and closed his eyes. He thought about the judge's words. Both of you love your daughter, and that's the most important thing. He thought about Emily's apology. He thought about Lily running into the courtroom. He thought about the last 3 years. And he realized that he hadn't been fighting to win. He had been fighting to stay, to be present, to be there. And in the end, that was enough.